Universities of applied sciences are one of the most underrated ways to study in Germany. But how are they different from traditional universities? Are they easier? And what career opportunities do you have afterwards? In this video, I'm going to give you a complete overview. So you have to understand, in Germany there are two main types of higher education institutions. Traditional universities called Universität and universities of applied sciences, usually called Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften or Fachhochschule. Traditional universities are usually more theoretical and research focused. They focus more on academic depth, scientific theory and research. Universities of applied sciences, on the other hand, are usually more practical. They focus more on applied skills, projects and internships. And right now there are more than 200 of them in Germany and about 40% of students are enrolled there. But here's the important part. A University of Applied Sciences is not a fake university. It is a fully recognized higher education institution where you can earn official bachelor's and master's degrees. Now, the biggest misunderstanding is that universities of applied sciences are somehow worse than traditional universities. You know, many students hear the word applied and think it sounds less academic, or they hear the word Fachhochschule and assume it's something like vocational training, but that is simply not correct. In many practical fields, graduates from universities of applied sciences can actually be very attractive to employers because they often have more hands-on experience. They might have completed more projects, done internship semesters, worked with real companies, and learned how to apply knowledge instead of, only studying the theory. And this is very important because the German job market does not only care about the name of your university. Yes, prestige can be important in certain fields and companies, but in most industries, employers care much more about whether you can actually do the job. So can you code? Can you solve practical problems? Can you work in a team? And yes, you can absolutely get these skills at traditional universities too. But this is exactly where universities of applied sciences are often very strong. Now, one important thing to understand is that universities of applied sciences usually don't appear very high in global university rankings. And this is often because these rankings focus on research output, scientific publications, citations, and connections to massive research institutions. Universities of applied sciences usually focus much less on research, so naturally they perform differently in those rankings. So if your main goal is a globally famous academic brand name or a research-oriented environment, then a traditional university might be the better fit for you. Now, universities of applied sciences are underrated because they often offer exactly what many students need. First, they usually have much smaller class sizes. At, big traditional universities, especially in popular bachelor's programs, you can easily end up sitting in lecture halls with hundreds of students. The professor gives a lecture, you take notes, and then you are expected to study a lot on your own. And for some students, this works well, but for many international students who are completely new to Germany, this can feel overwhelming and anonymous. At a University of Applied Sciences, the atmosphere is often more personal and structured. These universities are usually smaller and also have smaller class sizes. In my own degree program in computer science and design, for example, there are only around 50 students per semester. You're not just one of the 400 students in a big lecture hall. Professors often actually know you by name. You can ask questions, send emails, or book appointments with them directly. And in my experience, there were also more seminars, exercises, presentations, and group projects instead of, only big theoretical lectures. And I would say the whole environment was a bit more approachable and supportive. And one major advantage is that many professors at universities of applied sciences tend to have a lot of real industry experience. Many worked in companies before they became professors, so the teaching is often more connected to the real world. And they not only explain the theory, but also what companies actually expect in real life. And many universities of applied sciences also include internships or even entire practical semesters. And for me, it was in my 5th semester, which was completely reserved for an internship. So I worked as an intern in a company. And for international students, this is absolutely huge because getting the first internship or working student job in Germany is often the hardest step. But once you have your first real experience in Germany, things usually become much easier after that. Now, this focus also affects the structure of the degree. At many traditional universities, bachelor's degrees are designed for 6 semesters, so around 3 years. And after that, you can do a 4-semester master's degree, so around 2 years. Now, at many universities of applied sciences, the bachelor's degree is often 7 semesters, so around 3.5 years, because it might include a practical semester or internship semester. And the master's degree is then often shorter. It's usually around 3 semesters, so 1.5 years. So in the end, both options add up to a similar total duration of about 5 years. The difference is not necessarily that one path is much longer or shorter. The difference is how the time is structured. At a University of Applied Sciences, more of the practical experience is often built into the bachelor's degree itself. And this is important because today a degree alone is often not enough, but a degree plus real experience is very much necessary in today's German job market. Now, at the same time, learning German is also absolutely essential if you really want to build a life and career in Germany. So if you are a beginner, check out my video about the best way to learn German as a beginner. I also put a link to it in the video description. Now, a lot of students ask if universities of applied sciences are actually easier compared to traditional universities. And the honest answer is not necessarily. They can be less theoretical in some areas, but that doesn't mean they're easy. I would say the difficulty is a bit different. At a traditional university, the challenge is often academic depth. You have big lectures, theoretical content, difficult math, and a lot of independent studying. And the many modules you grade might depend mostly on one final big exam. But at a University of Applied Sciences, the difficulty is often more continuous. You might have more assignments, projects, presentations, group work, and deadlines throughout the semester. So it can be less, one giant exam decides everything, but the workload can feel constant. Now, many students are also afraid that if they choose a University of Applied Sciences for their bachelor's degree, they cannot do a master's later. But in many cases, that is simply not true. You can absolutely do a master's degree after graduating. You can either continue at another University of Applied Sciences, and in many cases, you can also apply to traditional universities. But, of course, you need to carefully check the admission requirements. Master's admissions in Germany are often very specific. Universities usually look at your bachelor's curriculum and check whether you have enough credits in subjects like math, statistics, or research methods. And for a PhD, the situation is a bit more complicated, because traditional universities have been the direct path into research and academia. But even this is slowly changing. Many universities of applied sciences are becoming more research-oriented. Some of them now even have the right to offer their own PhD programs in certain areas, or others collaborate with traditional universities through joint PhD modules. Still, if you already know that your long-term goal is a very theoretical academic career or research-focused path, then a traditional university is usually the more direct route. Now, one more interesting thing is that universities of applied sciences often offer very specialized or modern degree programs that, traditional universities sometimes don't focus on as much. And this can be physiotherapy, tourism, or dual study programs that combine university education with company work experience. And at the same time, there are also certain degree programs that universities of applied sciences usually don't offer. And this usually applies to programs that lead to a state examination like medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, law, or teaching. Now, if you're choosing a university, the most important thing is to not blindly follow prestige. The important thing is to understand yourself and what kind of education actually fits you. You can pick a traditional university or University of Applied Sciences. You can absolutely succeed at both. Now, for my backstory, back then I started at a traditional university first and later switched to a University of Applied Sciences because I found a particular degree and the teaching style there very attractive. I also made a video about this a couple years back and many students seemed to resonate with it. Now, there are hundreds of Universities of Applied Sciences across the country. Some of them are located in hidden gem student cities that are beautiful, affordable, and offer a really high quality of life. So if you're in the process of choosing a university, don't only look at famous cities like Munich, Berlin, or Hamburg just because you know the name. Compare the actual program, curriculum, internships, language requirements, and location. The DAAD degree database is a good place to start. And next, check out this video about the best way to learn German as a beginner. Love you and stay focused.